You could potentially accomplish a lot in 100 days. You could lose weight. You could walk from New York to Los Angeles at a brisk pace, or even write the U.S. Constitution. All big victories. That's what President Trump hopes for in his first 100 days.
I think the first couple months for Donald Trump is going to be very intense because he wants wins. He really wants points on the board.
At Real Clear Politics, a.b.stoddard knows what presidents face in this town. She says Trump is about to get a dose of congressional reality.
He's going to find that it's not a boardroom and that you have to do some care and feeding of members of Congress, or in the end you lose.
While the to-do list is fairly long, the priority of tax reform will be a complex task.
It's very, very tricky to try to take away any of the carve-outs in the tax code. There's a constituency and a lobby for everyone, and it's been tried before.
Trump has already talked infrastructure improvement, and Democrats seem willing to work with him on it. Then, of course, there's repealing and replacing Obamacare.
The conservatives that have been waiting for this since 2010 will demand this. This is year 7, and they need some kind of action right away.
Evangelicals want results, too. From the defunding of Planned Parenthood to Trump fulfilling his promise to repeal the Johnson Amendment, which muzzles pastors in the pulpit.
Free speech is being taken away from people that are great people, from people that are saying good things, not bad things.
But Trump's biggest move could happen within just weeks of taking the oath.
High profile, the Supreme Court pick. Crucial to everything, sets the tone at the beginning, I would think. He's got to come out strong there.
That pick, which is coming in 2 weeks after he's inaugurated, is going to be such an important beginning. Many voters voted for Donald Trump with a stomachache because they want a Supreme Court with 3 more conservative justices on it, or at least 1 or 2, possibly 3. And that, to many voters, was the sole reason for voting for Donald Trump.
As the country waits for that name, Trump will be busy with pen in hand. The plan? Reverse many of Obama executive actions and end burdensome federal and environmental regulations. The new president won't need Congress to approve the Keystone Pipeline or leave the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal that Obama put in place, but lawmakers never approved. Trump can also stop climate change payments to the United Nations. It's a lot to keep up with, so sign up for Twitter, because that's where you're going to find the new bully pulpit of the presidency, as the new commander-in-chief Trump breaks new ground by going directly to the people as tweeter-in-chief.
Well, David Brody is with us now from our Washington bureau. David, it's good to have you with us today. Is it Trump's basic belief? Does he feel like he was elected to make change and so absolutely intends for that to be the focus?
There's no question about that, Terry. I think that has been the case. And quite frankly, it really hadn't been the case at the beginning of this campaign. But as the campaign went along, he realized he had a basket full of deplorables that were with him all around the country. And Terry, this was the Democrats' biggest fear. I remember talking to a Democrat strategist about 9 months ago. This was roughly about 6 months into the campaign. And they said, look, if Donald Trump actually becomes the GOP nominee against Hillary Clinton, our biggest fear is that Rust Belt, that means Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, those states, those Rust Belt, older white Americans who are Reagan Democrats will come out in support of Trump because he's speaking their language. And boy, for a brash billionaire to talk like a cab driver and relate to folks like that, it's quite a political skill. He has been able to do that. And I think we're authentically going to see that here in mere hours.
Well, David, this is Pat. And hey, man, what a day, 45. You know, David, I don't know about you, but I think that Trump is going to be a transformational figure. I think he's going to go down in history as one of the great presidents of all time. Do you share my view or not? Is that too over the top?
Well, I can confirm that he shares your view, Pat. I don't think there's any question about it. Look, I think the bottom line with Donald Trump is he doesn't have time for all the silly nonsense that goes on in Washington. And I think what you're going to see, as a matter of fact, the parade, which normally is like 3 hours, this inaugural parade, he says, like, enough with the 3-hour parade. I want an hour and a half because I got to get to work. He's going to go visit the CIA on Saturday, or the FBI, excuse me, on Saturday. It's not a weekend for Donald Trump. So this guy has has no problem here getting down to make sure what's done in Washington gets done. And I think that's the key. As a matter of fact, I can see him now, Pat, where he literally looks around at all the pomp and circumstance and says, well, this is very nice, very elegant, but really, let's just get to work.
David, you know, I understand that he's forecasting cuts of $10 trillion. I mean, this is major, but it's overdue.
Yeah, we're looking at the Commerce Department, the Energy Department, and in essence, he's going to get rid of a lot of that waste that we've heard for years about. But let's face it, the establishment, Republican and Democrat, have had no desire to get rid of those pork projects or some of what that excess waste is all around Washington. So yes, he's going to do that. It could be $10 trillion over 10 years. The National Endowment for Arts, we know about that liberal gobbledygook, if you will. That should be gone. He's looking at privatizing PBS, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. So there are going to be a lot of changes coming, and they'll happen quickly, Pat, especially as it relates to executive orders.
Well, that's the slush fund for liberals. I mean, that National Endowment for the Arts, that Mapplethorpe, I remember standing up against the horrible things that man did. It was disgusting, obscene, and nasty. And yet we've had to pay for it. You remember the leaping lesbian follies? And I said, if the lesbians want to leap in folly, they can do it on their own money, not on mine. Okay, David, it looks like Trump has more evangelicals in his administration than any president. How much influence do you think they're going to have?
Huge. Pat, this is huge. Let's go down the list. In the West Wing, you've got, obviously, Mike Pence, Kellyanne Conway, born-again evangelical, Reince Priebus, an evangelical, faith very important to him. So you've got the White House chief of staff, a senior advisor, and the vice president, all as true blue, if you will, believers. And then you go to the cabinet and you have Ben Carson, you have Betsy DeVos, and you have others as well, Mike Pompeo. And so you put all of this in totality and you say, my goodness gracious, what a list of characters, if you will, evangelical characters. And let's not forget Sean Spicer, a pro-life, I was about to call him a pro-life Democrat. What am I talking about? A pro-life Catholic who wears his faith actually a bit on his sleeve, too. And we had a chance to speak with Sean Spicer, Pat, Jennifer and I, up in Trump Tower last week at an off-the-record meeting. And there are changes to come. This administration, we're in tight with this administration as it relates to being on the ground and understanding the pulse of what's going to happen. So keep it here. We're going to have quite a bit to share.
One last fight they've got is tax reform. Everybody knows the code needs fixing. The lobbyists are going to be going for their piece of the pie. What do you think? Is going to be a huge fight over it?
There's going to be a big fight over tax reform, but there is an expectation up here in Washington that will get done. So the question then becomes, Pat, what happens in the first 100 days? Do not expect any sort of tax reform package to actually get signed into law by President Trump. I can't believe I just said those words. I said those words, Pat. Whoever thought I would say those words? President Trump in the first 100 days. Instead, I think what you'll see at the end of 100 days is a framework for tax reform. It is complicated. You're right. The lobbyists will be up in arms left and right, literally left and right. And so when you put it all together, the framework will be there at the end of 100 days, but then maybe expect something in April, maybe May, actually, as it relates to tax reform being on the president's desk.
David, it's a new day. There's happiness in Washington. Is there? Well, anyhow, we'll talk more about it. Thank you for covering. Appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Pat.